to my channel. On today's video I've got an amazing special guest. This is Julia Edgley, homeopath and holistic practitioner who actually healed my skin from start to finish. As you guys know on my channel, I have had eczema since birth and TSW about 2 years ago, and Julia really helped me on my healing journey. So it is with such great excitement to present Julia Edgley here. A 4-part series specifically for you guys, and we're going to start off today with identifying food intolerances, food sensitivities, and also food allergies, and what we need to do in order to really understand exactly what we're sensitive to and what we're reacting to, which is causing our itching. The second part we're going to look at is zingers. Now, zingers is something that I myself also struggled with, as it's a real side effect of TSW, maybe not so much as eczema, but we're going to look at zingers with Julia as well. The third part series, we're going to be looking at the itch and specific to the itch and what's causing that itch. And lastly, we're going to look at PTSD, the stress underlying factors that we have alongside our condition as well. So thank you so much for agreeing to join me today.
My pleasure.
Obviously, as a homeopath, tell us a little bit about how you treat your patients, and particularly with those who have got skin conditions, from maybe mild eczema to more severe eczema to people with TSW like myself. And how is it a little bit of eczema can develop TSW through steroid use and steroid misuse, obviously, because we are prescribed by medical mainstream practitioners to apply steroids to us. So tell me a little bit about homeopathy and skin conditions and how you treat them.
Okay, so the one thing where homeopathy shines, because I'm aware for your followers, the homeopathy is controversial, although it is extremely popular for skin conditions. Exactly because what you said is the misuse of steroid creams. Now, for any dermatologist watching this, I understand why steroid creams are used, and I can understand in some emergency cases why they have to be given, because when you have eczema specifically, you can get infected. I don't know if your eczema ever got infected, I can't remember.
I think when I was little that it would get infected. Yeah.
And so that is, everything is trying to avoid that. So, because you can't just keep using antibiotics. You know I'm obsessed with antibiotics.
Yes.
So I get why it's used, but it's exactly what you said, it's the mismanagement.
Right.
So what homeopathy does, it gives us an option. It gives an optional alternative to avoid the crisis that would need steroid cream, and it works on the internal working. So the reason behind why somebody would have eczema. Now, how that would translate to TSW is because if you have eczema, TSW from eczema, so that's the development, you will have used the eczema, the steroids, and then TSW. So if we can avoid that overuse of steroid creams, particularly the creams, because that's TSW, we can avoid the TSW. Now, homeopathy really does shine. The research in homeopathy and skin conditions is incredible. So if you want, I can give you the list. There's so much research out there on it, and it's really where it shines. So there's different layers that you can work with within homeopathy, and then complementary practices to homeopathy, and that's where I come from. That's where you went with me. Down here I'm well known that my treatments are quite intense. Because I do get patients who their cases are very intense because they've had overuse of years medications, and that has to be unravelled. So if you're just using homeopathy to treat skin issues, you're looking at different factors. You're looking at remedies to address the tendency to, what we call the maintaining cause. Generally in eczema, it's the genetics. You can see it in the family. If you don't see it in the family, or you don't see things like hay fever or asthma, because in homeopathy those three groups, they're grouped together as the same family of pathologies.
I have all three of those.
You can see what I'm saying. I'm like, oh wow, okay,
That's me.
And so we have that. If you don't see that in the case, you're looking at a trigger. You're looking at a cause in this life, where it can be over medication, it can be food, it can be stress. So they're the two. We're looking at the genetics. In homeopathy, that's called the miasmatic treatment, or we're looking at the etiological prescription, which is the cause. You're then looking at how and this is in terms of trying to select the correct homeopathic remedy, because I'll dive into that a bit sooner. But then we look at the symptom picture of the eczema. When I talk about symptom picture in homeopathy, it's because in homeopathy what pathology you have doesn't necessarily impact how we choose the correct remedy.
Okay.
It's all based on your symptoms. So how your eczema or your TSW manifests in you. So when I go over, we're going to do another video where I suggest a few simple remedies that can help an acute. You'll see what I'm talking about, symptom pictures.
Yes.
Now in homeopathy, how you take the remedies can be in various different ways. You can take it in granules, you can take it in liquids, you can take it in powders.
Right.
I don't give powders because a lot of my patients travel, and you can't really travel with white powder.
Right, yeah.
It really looks. You can also get little tablets, so I don't give that. I give little granules. Yeah. Kids can take them, adults can take them.
They taste nice.
Kids love them because they taste sweet.
Yeah, they taste sweet, yeah.
And so that's how you would prescribe it in just purely homeopathic treatment. Now, I have also seen in practice that the longer the pathology the patient is dealing with the symptoms of pathology like eczema, the more nutrition we have to look at, the more diet we have to look at. It's not just in homeopathy. We now know that your immune response, your inflammatory response, which underpins the eczema, comes from your intestines. So we have to look at the intestines. We have to look at how well your body can detox, because your skin is a detox organ. It's the biggest detox organ in the body, and so we have to really look at any factor that is contributing to that. So it's what I call the difference between a cause and a contributing factor. So you might be having these foods, and it's not, well, if I eat that food, I'm not getting a reaction. But I know it's contributing to the bigger picture of why your body is inflamed.
Yes, because do you remember, I used to come to you in the very early days and I said, no, I don't have a reaction with gluten. No, I don't have a reaction with dairy. And in actual fact...
Do you remember my expression?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah. But I mean, when you eliminate some of these foods and identifying these intolerances, you know, obviously, I think some people, you know, especially on our community with eczema and TSW, they try some of these diets and they try them for sort of several weeks and they don't see any progress. I mean, in terms of progress, obviously, depending on how bad your TSW and your eczema is, and how long your steroid use is, and how, you know, how many toxins your body's carrying. I mean, for me, it took me about, I think it was 6 to 8 weeks to really see a proper result. But the second time round when I did my TSW, it wasn't as severe as the first time round. And we'll get back to that a little bit about going back onto steroids, you know, if people need to, in a little bit, we'll touch on that. But I mean, that's 6 to 8 weeks. I did it in the lockdown of 2020, and it was just the perfect time because I was at home the whole time. I had that, you know, I had that very, very simple routine at home, not going to work, not doing anything, and
not having any temptations.
Not having any temptations, only buying what I needed to. So it was almost like, it was almost sort of like, you know, home imprisonment, but not home imprisonment, you know what I mean? I mean, it really was a lockdown, so, you know, in every sense. But I mean, 6 to 8 weeks for my severity of
which is
eczema,
the standard.
Which is the standard. So do you, do you think that's standard for most
so there's
patients?
a few things you touched on there that I would really love to clarify.
Okay.
So you're talking about eczema and TSW.
Yes.
So I'm talking about TSW from eczema.
From eczema.
So if you have TSW, you need, and when I say TSW, I mean topical. I don't mean oral steroids.
Okay, all right.
Or
Big
topical
difference.
steroids. You need to know why you went on them in the first place.
Right.
So diet is very important for those of people who had eczema.
Yes.
To go on. Even I had a few psoriasis patients.
Oh, yes.
But diet is very important. If that was the cause of why you went on steroids.
Yes.
And so that's the underlying trigger of TSW.
Okay.
So that is why I always focus on diet, because they're the type of patients I've seen. All the patients that I've seen with TSW came from an eczema in childhood background.
And quite early on eczema?
Very early on.
So they've had it, and also genetic as well, because you
all of them.
Okay, so quite typical to, you know, a general eczema patient who's overused
family
steroids
history, everything.
On the topical steroids and then develop the TSW.
Yes,
right.
And most patients, it's good that you're bringing up about the oral steroids and going back on, because that is really something that's really important to see and to have the correct plan.
Right.
So when you're going food intolerances, I think there's a big misunderstanding of food intolerances. I did a huge on my Instagram explaining, so I'm really happy to be able to explain this now, because where I am working there. Like 10 years ago, there was no doctors that did any tests whatsoever on food intolerances. It was very misunderstood.
Yes.
If you said you had a food intolerance, they sent you, I'm going to do the French words now, you might tell me.
Yes.
Allergologue.
Ooh.
Allergy doctor.
And
the allergy doctor said if it's food intolerance, you need to go to the gastro.
Yes, which is similar to an IgE test in the UK, where they prick your skin. and they put the allergy down. They either do it on your back or on your arm.
Yeah, there's multiple tests.
Yes.
So that's where I want to get, so that if you're trying to identify the food intolerance,
Yes.
you have to do all these tests.
Okay.
So it's not just one test. So I do get patients who come in like, I've done the test, I've got no allergies. I'm like, can I just see which one you've done?
Right.
So I'm going to define what is the difference between a food intolerance, a food sensitivity, and a food allergy. So
Okay.
you know which one we're talking about.
Okay.
So when you are eliminating these foods, because there are going to be multiple food groups, you have to do it for a minimum of 6 weeks. Now some patients feel great in the first 6 weeks, and some people, they need the 6 weeks, and then afterwards they see a difference in their diet, in their digestion, their sleep, and their skin.
And also you can sort of get worse at the beginning when you go on these diets,
Yes.
and then you get onto the sort of an easier path. I mean, the healing process is not very linear with any of this.
No.
But I actually found in the first early few weeks when I went on that quite strict diet, you know, where it was just literally, you know, meat and green beans. I think it was very, very basic. There was only 20 food types that I was allowed to, you know, eat in those early 2 weeks. My skin that first week, I think, really did flare before I started to see.
I can tell you why.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, because when you're, do you remember? Did you do the whole 3 week thing? Did I explain this to you back then? Because it's kind of.
It's a bit of a blur.
Okay, so basically, you're going to reach a point of 2-3 weeks where either you contact me and you hate me, or you hate life, or you cry.
I think I cried a lot. I remember sitting in that chair crying a lot, going, "Am I going to look like this for the rest of my life?" You know.
And I say to patients, "You're going to actually contact me, going, what are you doing? Like, do you know what you're doing? Blah blah blah."
Yes.
And they're like, "No, I won't," and they always do, because you are completely flipping. You're reducing inflammation.
Yeah.
Generally, you're reducing sugars, and when we talk about the zingers, I want to talk about sugar then.
Yes, singers,
so you're reducing sugar. You feel more tired because your body's not inflamed; it's not going on adrenaline. Reducing sugar, you're changing how your body, the calories you're taking in.
Yeah.
That's why I always say to patients, whatever food intolerance you're doing, diet you're doing, you have to eat enough calories. You have to eat enough food.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people remove foods, but they don't put the correct foods in.
Well, because they don't often know, you know, what to make for themselves, you know, because and that was my biggest struggle, was like, well, okay, I can only have these foods, but you know, I can't have, you know, this rice cracker every single day, you know, and only eat rice crackers every single day. I've got to mix it up because I'm not getting the nutrients either, and I'm not getting the calories. And the worst thing is that when you're not getting the calories, you slip off the diet, you know, and that's such a common mistake.
You get really stressed, and that's why the skin flares. Is because you're like, you're probably not sleeping right. So that's why the skin will flare in the first 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
It's completely normal.
Okay.
So what I always say to patients is, when I give them the diet, and some diets have been really I think even more severe than yours. And I'm like, the reason why we're doing these 6 weeks really stressed is so we can get foods back in, because you have to feed the body from within. I always say to patients, there's very few food allergies, it's more food intolerances I see, and food sensitivities. And the aim is, the food doesn't cause this, it's how your body's reacting to the food is causing this issue.
And it's temporary?
Yes, you might have one food that might be for life, but when you get to a state of balance in your body, you can cheat every so cheat every so often. And that's the aim I want, is like you can live. Yeah. But we have to be really intense in the initial
Because I had a cheat day, like I think it was every Sunday I was allowed to have a cheat day. Yeah. You know, and I was allowed to eat what I wanted.
That was after the 6 weeks. You did actually the full 6 weeks, and then after that we did a cheat day.
Yeah, we did a cheat day.
Because you just can't keep up with it.
No, but I mean, I had that burning, you know, that facial burning. So I was not only itchy, but that burning would keep me up at night. Yeah. And you know, I couldn't sleep because of the burning sensation, not just the bone deep itch that we all suffer from with TSW, but that just inflamedness, you know, that absolutely inflamed.
And so the thing is, you have to manage stress in this.
Yes.
So I always say to patients is, okay, we have the food list. Yeah. Well, I do now anyway, didn't do for you. The food list is like, you need to take 2 weeks to try, write down all the foods you eat. Yes. We're going to find the swaps, we're going to do the recipes, we're going to do this. I give very basic recipes. I just need you to eat. That's great. And then you need to be, that's why I always say to patients, like, you're so sweet, you gave little gifts and everything. Like, I just know the books. You did all the work. Because you looked at the recipes, you tried everything, so that the patient really does the work. Yes. So I try and give as many recipes as I can, and it's all about being prepared. So get the food list, be prepared, and then start it 2 weeks later.
And that's what I do every Sunday at home, and I did this in some of my other videos, is that on Sundays, that is my bake-off day, basically, and I make my bread, and I make my no tomato sauce, and I make my no pesto sauce, and you know, all my little bits that, so if I'm in a rush during the week, then I can just literally grab something and go, and then I
remember to eat. That's good.
Yeah, and having that stash, you know, and having some meal prep, Which is, goes back to sort of the days whereby, 30 years ago you would do proper meal prep. You would go to the supermarket and you would prep your meals for the week. You wouldn't just sort of, grab something, that was just a fast food item. And I think we've really fallen into this fast food rabbit hole. So tell me about your allergy tests and how they're different from the IgE normal tests that we get from medical practitioners. Because your allergy tests are really quite special, to be honest, because they're not very invasive. So tell us a little bit about your allergy tests.
Okay, so for any doctors watching this, I am well aware it's controversial, but I am homeopath. So it's when I was where we live 10 years ago, as I was saying, there were no doctors that were doing any tests whatsoever.
How interesting.
So it was so. I mean, 10 years ago, you think we would have, because around the world everyone was talking about food intolerances, but they weren't. So I had to find a way to identify foods in patients. So I trained in kinesiology, which is a muscle test. And you isolate one muscle, and you can use, it actually came from an osteopath in the States, and you can isolate one muscle and you can then test any item really, like you can do environmental toxins and foods that create an imbalance and a weakness in the body, with very subtle muscle movements.
So it's not really a proper allergy, because I remember when my daughter was about 18 months. We went, and it was just the most horrific experience.
I remember this.
We went to the hospital and we had the allergy test on her, and a little baby, she had to be pricked with all these things, and then put these, droplets of the food type on her skin, and then cover it up, and we had to wait, I think it was like 3 days or something, and then go back, and they would lift it up, and if it was a raised bump, and that's the IgE, which I think everybody knows about.
And that can create a systemic reaction. I know a lot of patients that had that test, and then they've had a huge flare up after that.
Awful, I mean, it was an awful experience. And I think actually when I was a child, I had one done perhaps on my back. But it was really looking for allergies rather than sensitivities or intolerances, because that's the difference. I think with the kinesiology test that you do, it's so sensitive that you can pick up foods that we eat every single day and we don't realise that they can be causing some disruption in our guts.
So that's what happened then after I tried the kinesiology. Then doctors started, it's just the region we live in, those doctors started doing more and more tests. And what we found is actually what came up in my tests, I'm pointing because the kits over there, was the same as blood tests. So then actually a lot of doctors around here got very confident the tests I can do, because it's not, like you said, it's non-invasive. I can do it on little kids, because depending on where you are in the world, some countries won't do food intolerance tests or even allergy tests on young kids under the age of 2 or 3.
And literally, just to explain what it is, do you want to explain what you do?
Basically I isolate one muscle. So I isolate the latissimus dorsi by twisting the arm of the patient. I then test the quality of the movement and the force of that muscle, and then I should have gotten one.
That's okay. I mean, literally,
a little vial.
You're just holding a little vial. You're just holding something in your hand,
and I see how the muscle moves.
And then, Julia just observes the muscle. So it's very non-invasive. I mean, even toddlers can do it. And anybody who can. I mean, you have to be standing.
Some babies I can have if the mother is holding the baby. I test the mother and then I test the baby and see the difference. So that's how I identified food issues. Now, if you don't have that anywhere near you, what I would suggest is you need to go to your doctor, your GP. You need to get the GP that is on your side, and you're going to ask for these 3 tests. Okay. So, because there's a difference between a food allergy, like you said, a food intolerance, and a food sensitivity. So a food allergy is an IgE, it's an immune response to immunoglobulin E. So that is where we are, it's acute inflammation, it's breathing difficulties, it's anaphylaxis, that can be varying intensities. That's an IgE. An IgG is a more systemic reaction from the immunoglobulin G. So that can be done through a blood test. So the IgE can also be done through a blood test, actually. So it's a prick test or a blood test. So they're the 2 you can do. Now that's a food intolerance is an IgE. IgG. IgE is a food allergy. Then we go into food sensitivities, where there mightn't be an immunoglobulin reaction, an immune reaction, but your body's still reacting to it. And I include in this sugar, and I'm going to talk more about sugar again in zingers, sugar, histamine foods, deadly nightshade foods, Give me other foods. You can also as well get cross-reactivity. Cross-reactivity is where the protein in one food is very similar to another food or a pollen. And I'm going to give you an example of this. So you will actually start to react to the other foods as well. If your inflammatory pathways are still alight, is what I call it, like still on fire. So while we are calming down the inflammation in the body and the reaction, we need to remove cross-reactivities as well. So an example could be for this, and there's still debate on this, if you are allergic to grass pollen, rice is a grass. So they don't know if you inhale the pollen and you ingest it, the similar proteins, is it going to have a reaction? So if the type of patients I have, you know, if they're very intense, and I could go and do a blanket cull for 6 weeks, and then we start to introduce these foods. So I would suggest the test that everyone does is you're going to get either a blood test or a prick test of an IgE. You're going to get a blood test of an IgG, and you would get a stool sample. So a stool sample will tell you profile of your gut flora, so about inflammatory pathways. It can tell enzymes. Enzymes such as DAO will then indicate is a histamine issue, and a good practitioner can take that stool sample. There's different stool samples obviously, but stool sample, and can look at how your intestines are functioning, and then can choose different foods from that. So if you can't get a kinesiology test, they're the 3 tests that I would suggest. And that will give you a very good overview of what your body is doing for different foods and why.
So it's the IgE is for food, for food allergies, and the IgG is for intolerances.
Exactly. And the stool sample is for the sensitivity.
So the 3 that you need to get done.
That's what I recommend. If you have a histamine issue, there's a more specific test you can do, such as you can test DAO levels, which is the enzyme that downgrades histamine.
My best friend.
You need to get your histamine levels checked as well, and there has to be an interpretation of the ratio between them.
And how do you test for that? Then through the stool as well?
No, they're bloods.
They're bloods as well.
But you have to do both, because I see a lot of practitioners just saying DAO.
Right.
You have to do DAO and you have to do histamine.
And that's a blood test.
They're blood tests.
Okay, on top. Right.
Deadly nightshade, they should come up in the other stool samples. Sugar, nobody is allergic to sugar, but sugar is going to have a big impact as well. Again, that doesn't come up in the test. Kinesiology is great for this, but I think generally part of it is people need to remove sugar.
Sugar's one of the biggest killers, really.
And you know what, it robs our body of nutrients that we need for stress. It creates a stress type profile in our body, and it also, when you have zingers, I know I keep bringing this up, but for neurological issues, sugar will have an impact.
And collagen as well, because we get the elephant skin. It's almost an aftermath of TSW, and for me, I really had issues with my collagen production, and I felt that by removing that sugar, it was reducing that inflammation and no longer masking that collagen production that I had, even in my mid-40s.
Basically, with the skin, is you also need to give the skin a chance to heal. So if your body's trying to fight the sugar and the sugar and the sugar, it hasn't got a moment to heal. That's why sleep as well is very, very important. The other thing as well, this is what I wanted to say, is there is a certain amount of the itch in TSW and eczema, or just TSW as well, that is addictive. It's working with serotonin and dopamine. So basically, when you start scratching, it's like, oh my god, that feels so good. Everybody with TSW will know this.
We know that.
So you actually have an addictive type profile because of that. Sugar creates an addictive type profile. So you get a lot of people, I'm like, oh my god, I need the sugar. They actually see the addiction, and I'm like, but I need the sugar to make me feel better. I'm just like, it's the sugar that's making you like that.
Really?
And the itch,
so there's a relationship between the sugar and how much sugar you take and how much you itch.
Yes, oh god, yes, absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
And so when I talk about itch remedies, I'm going to be talking about something that will help. Hopefully, it's kind of a tool, a resource you can use to stop the habit. I call the itch junkie.
Because that's the dopamine, isn't it? It's basically
dopamine and serotonin, how they work together.
Because the dopamine is that hormone release that you get from that scratching,
from the addiction,
that satisfaction that we have when we scratch.
So we want to scratch more and more and more and more.
That's so good. Oh well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.